The cabin hummed with the soft rhythm of boarding, the rustle of jackets, the click of seatbelts, the low chatter of travelers. Yet beneath the calm, there was something weightier, something unspoken that hung in the air. Marcus Reed guided his twins into their seats with quiet patience, helping them buckle in, smoothing his son's collar the way only a father who's done this 100 times could. To everyone else, it was just another flight, another set of passengers heading somewhere. But to Marcus, the air already felt different, too quiet to be ordinary. When the flight attendant approached, her smile was professional, but her eyes told another story. "Excuse me, sir," she said, tone clipped but polite. "Are those your children?" Marcus nodded, still smiling. The question wasn't new, but it still stung in familiar ways. "Yes," he said evenly. "Just making sure they're comfortable." She hesitated before continuing, asking to see his tickets again. Marcus's hand paused mid-air. "We already scanned them," he replied softly, the faintest edge in his voice. Her smile didn't fade, but her tone did. "It's just procedure," she said, though her glance lingered too long, searching for something that wasn't there. When she walked away, the twins looked at him, confusion flickering in their eyes. "Did we do something wrong?" Ava whispered. Marcus shook his head slowly. "No, baby," he murmured, eyes steady. "Sometimes people look for wrong where there isn't any." As the engines began to rumble beneath them, the hum of the cabin seemed to deepen. Everyone else carried on, laughing, scrolling, settling in. But Marcus could feel it now, the stillness before a storm that no one else could hear. A flight too quiet to be ordinary. Caroline's smile held steady, trained, immaculate, yet cold around the edges. "Good afternoon, sir," she said, her voice smooth but sharp in the places it shouldn't be. Marcus returned the greeting, his tone calm, but his eyes searched hers, reading what she didn't say. The twins sat quietly, headphones on, unaware that the air between their father and the attendant had shifted. "Are they comfortable?" Caroline asked, leaning forward slightly. It wasn't the question. It was how she asked it. With that thin-lipped pause that said they like, it meant something else. Marcus nodded. "They're fine." His reply was short, polite, measured. Her gaze flicked between them, from his deep brown hands adjusting a small backpack to the children's lighter complexions. A flicker of doubt crossed her expression, brief but poisonous. "You're traveling together?" she asked, pretending to check the seating chart. Marcus exhaled slowly. "We are." Silence followed, thick and heavy. Passengers nearby pretended not to listen, yet their eyes flicked up, then away. A mother 2 rows back whispered something to her husband. He glanced toward them, quick, curious, judgmental. Caroline straightened her uniform, the smile returning, this time tighter. "All right then. Enjoy your flight." Marcus watched her walk away, her heels striking the aisle like punctuation marks in a sentence he'd read too many times before. Narration softened the moment. He'd spent years mastering silence, knowing when to speak, when to swallow it. But this wasn't silence. It was erasure, practiced and polite. As the seatbelt sign blinked on, he looked at his children. "Keep your music on," he said gently. They nodded, oblivious. Outside, the plane began to taxi. Inside, the line had already been drawn, not in words, but in a smile that told him exactly where he stood. "Sir, I just need to see your boarding passes again," Caroline said, her voice carrying that same polished firmness. She stood straighter this time, hands clasped like someone convinced they were right. Marcus didn't move at first. The twins looked up from their seats, small brows furrowed, the hum of the cabin dimming into a quiet tension. "You've already seen them," Marcus said evenly. "Twice," Caroline's smile twitched. "It's standard procedure." "No, it's not," he replied. The words weren't loud, but they landed like a weight on the aisle. A man nearby coughed to break the silence. Someone shifted their bag, pretending not to watch. The air had changed. The kind of quiet that makes every sound sharper. Every breath counted. "Sir, I'm just doing my job," Caroline pressed, a nervous edge now slipping through her control. Marcus met her eyes. "Your job or your judgment?" She blinked, taken aback, her mouth parting, but no words followed. The twins stared at their father, The kind of gaze that learns what silence can mean. One of them reached for his sleeve. He rested his hand over theirs. "I've flown this airline for years," he continued softly, "and I've never been asked 3 times for the same proof." From the back, someone muttered, "Just let the man sit." Another voice added, "She's out of line." Caroline's shoulders stiffened. The certainty she wore like armor began to crack. The captain's voice echoed faintly through the intercom, routine words about departure, yet the moment didn't move. Marcus leaned back, steady, unshaken. Narration closed in gently. In that quiet defiance, he didn't just protect his right to sit. He taught his children that truth, spoken calmly, could still make the world tremble. Caroline leaned closer, her perfume sharp and deliberate. "Sir," she whispered, her voice smooth but heavy with something colder, "we've had complaints. Someone said you were making others uncomfortable." The words slithered between them like smoke, soft, almost kind, yet meant to burn. Marcus didn't answer. His children sat still, sensing the danger adults pretend not to see. Around them, passengers turned away. A man tightened his seatbelt. A woman lowered her eyes to a magazine she wasn't reading. Silence became its own witness. "Uncomfortable how?" Marcus finally asked. His tone wasn't defensive, just quiet. The kind of quiet that exposes lies. Caroline blinked, unprepared for his calm. "Just behavior that drew attention," she stammered. "Breathing?" he said softly. "That's all we've been doing." No one laughed. The engines roared louder, as if to drown out the truth hanging in the air. Caroline's throat tightened. "Please, sir, I'm asking you to cooperate." "I already have," Marcus replied. 3 times. The twins watched him, small hands folded, eyes wide with questions too old for their years. Caroline's face hardened. "If you can't follow instructions—" "I followed respect," Marcus interrupted, voice low, controlled. "Can you say the same?" Something flickered behind her eyes, the first crack of guilt she wouldn't admit. The seatbelt light blinked on above them, casting red across her uniform. She turned away, pretending to check a tray cart. Narration sank in like a slow breath. Some battles are fought without sound, only the weight of who refuses to look away. As the plane tilted upward, a truth sank lower, deeper than altitude, heavier than air. Justice had taken its seat. It just hadn't been served yet. The office lights hummed, a low, steady sound, like the pulse of something pretending to be calm. Caroline sat across from her supervisor years before the flight, hands folded neatly, eyes dry. A report lay on the desk, a passenger's written complaint. Disrespectful conduct toward a black family. The supervisor skimmed it, sighed, and looked up with practiced patience. "Caroline," he said, voice clipped but kind. "You know how sensitive people can be these days." She tilted her head slightly. "I was following policy." "I'm sure you were." His smile was the kind that fixed everything without fixing anything. "Let's just be careful with tone, all right?" That was the first time she realized silence could erase anything, if it came from the right mouth. She nodded. Understood. The paper slipped into a file drawer that would never open again. Years blurred into shifts, shifts into habits. Small things. Seat upgrades denied. Complaints lost. Jokes shared among crew about certain passengers who were difficult. Caroline laughed when she was supposed to. When one attendant hesitated, she'd whisper, "Don't overthink it. It's just people being people." But sometimes, late at night, she'd remember faces. Quiet ones, tired ones, the kind that didn't argue because they'd done that too many times before. Something in her chest would tighten, then vanish by morning. When a younger coworker once asked, "Do you ever feel bad?" Caroline smiled. "For what?" The girl didn't answer. She just looked at her, like she saw the kind of wrong that wears perfume and perfect posture. Narration lingered in the silence. Patterns don't start loud. They begin in whispers, approvals, and signatures. The cruelty that hides behind calm voices never shouts. It only smiles. The plane hummed like a memory he couldn't mute. Marcus stared at the tray table, hands clasped tight, knuckles pale. Across the aisle, a steward moved without looking at him, the same way the officer hadn't looked at his father years ago. On that night train, he could still hear it. "Step aside. Sir?" His father's voice had been calm then, almost polite. "Is something wrong?" The officer's flashlight cut through the dark like judgment. "You don't look like you belong in first class." Marcus, 13 then, had felt his chest lock. His father's dignity had been a shield, but one built of thin glass. The officer searched, found nothing, and still smirked like he'd won. When they sat back down, his father's hands shook only once, then folded, steady again. Now, years later, the cabin lights flickered, and Marcus blinked away the image. His daughter's voice, soft, curious, broke the silence. "Dad, why are you mad?" "I'm not," he said quickly. "You look like Grandpa did." In that picture. He looked at her. So young, untouched by the ways the world could shrink you. "He just got tired, baby. That's all." But the truth pressed against his chest. Tired wasn't the word. It was something heavier. A silence inherited, carried like breath. Caroline walked past again. Her eyes met his for half a second, then drifted away. He saw it. The same polite dismissal, the same certainty of safety. He exhaled slowly, steady. The vow he made years ago whispered again, "Never let them see you break." And yet, somewhere between sky and memory, he felt that vow cracking. Not loud, just enough to let the past breathe again. Caroline's smile was thin, professional, the kind that vanished before reaching her eyes. "Sir, I'll need to see your boarding pass again," she said, though she'd checked it twice already. Marcus didn't argue. He handed it over silently. His son shifted beside him, confused. His daughter stared at the untouched juice box on her tray. Caroline frowned, scanning the pass as if searching for a reason that didn't exist. "Just routine," she muttered, placing it back. Her hand brushed his fingers, quick, dismissive, as though touching something that didn't belong. Across the aisle, passengers avoided his gaze. A man adjusted his earbuds. A woman glanced toward the window. Silence filled the cabin, polite and cowardly. Elena Cruz, sitting 2 rows behind, watched. Her heart beat unevenly. She'd seen this before. In classrooms, in offices, in checkout lines. She told herself, stay out of it. But the tone in Caroline's voice made her chest tighten. Caroline leaned closer to Marcus's children. "Next time you should keep your seats clean, all right?" Her words were soft, but they cut. The boy nodded. Small, unsure. "Ma'am," Marcus said, voice low, calm but trembling beneath restraint. "They haven't touched anything." Caroline's posture stiffened. "I'm just doing my job, sir." He held her gaze, steady, unflinching. "Then do it with respect." A sharp silence followed. Someone coughed. The captain's voice crackled faintly over the speakers, indifferent. Elena's hand trembled as she lifted her phone, pretending to check messages. Her camera opened instead. Not rebellion, just proof. Proof that silence had a sound, and it was happening right now. History didn't always scream. Sometimes it pressed its voice through the hum of an airplane engine, waiting for someone to finally listen. The captain's voice sliced through the cabin, steady but cold. "Security will meet this aircraft upon landing." A ripple of silence followed. Caroline's lips curved. The satisfaction was small, almost hidden, but it gleamed like glass. She turned toward Marcus. "See, sir? Procedures. Nothing personal." Marcus didn't move. His jaw tightened. The twins pressed closer, their tiny fingers curling around the edge of his coat. He placed his hand over theirs, steady, shielding, saying what words couldn't. "Nothing personal?" he repeated softly. "That's what they always say before they strip a man of his dignity." Caroline blinked, her confidence faltering for a moment. I'm following regulations." "Regulations don't pick faces, Caroline," he murmured. His tone didn't rise, but it reached every ear within 2 rows. "People do." From behind, a whisper rippled through the passengers. "This doesn't look right." Another voice. "Why call security?" "He didn't do anything," Caroline straightened, pretending not to hear. "Please, remain seated," she snapped, but her voice trembled faintly, a crack in polished authority. Elena's phone kept recording, her hands shaking. She whispered, "Don't stop talking." Marcus gave her a small nod, gratitude wrapped in exhaustion. "You don't have to record," he said. "But thank you for seeing." The hum of the plane grew louder, almost suffocating. Caroline turned away, pretending to check the overhead bin. Her throat tightened, not from guilt, not yet, but from exposure. The eyes she'd counted on to stay silent were no longer pretending. As the aircraft began its slow descent, Marcus closed his eyes. Justice, he realized, didn't always land softly. Sometimes it arrived shaking, trembling, but it arrived all the same. The airport gate pulsed with a strange silence, the kind that follows exposure. Dozens of screens replayed the same 30 seconds. Caroline's voice, sharp and dismissive. Marcus sitting still, calm, the twins clutching his arms. Elena stood beside him now, phone lowered. "They've posted it everywhere," she whispered. "It's everywhere." Marcus nodded slowly. Truth travels fast when it's finally seen. Across the room, Caroline sat alone on a bench, her uniform still crisp but her confidence stripped raw. Her phone buzzed endlessly. Messages, statements, corporate calls. She didn't answer. She couldn't. A news anchor's voice echoed from a nearby TV. "An airline employee is under investigation after a racially charged incident caught on video earlier today." Caroline flinched. A man nearby muttered, "That's her." She stared down at her trembling hands. "It wasn't like that," she said quietly, as if explaining to herself. Marcus walked past her, not toward confrontation but closure. "Sometimes," he said gently, "the truth doesn't need your version." She looked up, eyes red. "You ruined me," he paused. "No," he said, his tone steady. "You just finally saw yourself." The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't shout. They simply looked, the same way people do when the curtain falls and the story ends. Caroline's breathing quickened. Her eyes darted toward the phones still raised. Every lens felt like a mirror she couldn't escape. Marcus gathered his children. One of them asked softly, "Are we going home now?" He smiled faintly. "Yes. The world finally knows why we kept quiet." As they walked away, the noise of cameras faded, replaced by something heavier, the sound of accountability settling in. The conference room hummed with the faint buzz of fluorescent light, the kind of sound that exposes every breath. Caroline sat at the far end, a white folder clutched tight against her chest. Her reflection in the glass wall looked smaller than she remembered. Across from her, Marcus waited. Not with rage, but with a calm that made her chest ache. A man from the disciplinary board cleared his throat. "Mr. Grant, you may proceed." Marcus leaned forward. His voice was steady. "My children learned something that day," he began, eyes fixed on Caroline. "Not about flying. About falling, in a world that still doesn't see them as belonging." No one moved. Even the hum of the lights seemed to dim. Caroline's lips parted. "I didn't mean harm," she whispered, the words trembling out like a confession too late to matter. Marcus nodded slowly. "That's what harm always says." Silence deepened. Not angry, just heavy. The kind that forces reflection. One of the board members scribbled something but didn't look up. Another shifted uncomfortably. The weight in the room wasn't in what was said, but in what couldn't be undone. Caroline's fingers fidgeted with her badge. The edges dug into her palm. "I followed protocol," she murmured. Marcus looked at her one last time. "Protocol doesn't ask for proof 3 times," he said quietly. "Fear does." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. The sound of his chair sliding back echoed louder than any verdict. Outside, reporters waited. Inside, there were no headlines, only consequence. Marcus stood, nodded once to the board, and left. No one called after him. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was final. The hum of rolling suitcases fills the terminal, a sound Caroline once found comforting. Now it scrapes against her nerves like quiet judgment. A woman at the counter glances up, recognition flickering before fading into polite indifference. That hurts more than the headlines ever did. Caroline adjusts her scarf, a nervous habit she never had before. She used to walk these halls with purpose, clipboard in hand, voice firm, eyes unflinching. Today she walks slower, smaller. The badge she once wore like armor is gone, replaced by a hollow ache in her chest. A janitor nods as he passes. She almost smiles, then doesn't. "Morning," she murmurs, but he's already gone. Her phone buzzes again. Another message from someone who wasn't there. "You didn't deserve all that hate." She stares at it, wondering if that's comfort or blindness. Her reflection in the glass gate door answers neither. A child nearby laughs, a sound too pure for the moment. Caroline's eyes follow the sound until she sees a black family boarding a plane. The twins giggle, holding hands, running ahead of their father. She freezes. It's them, or maybe not. She can't tell anymore. Faces blur when guilt does the remembering. Her breath stumbles. The father turns slightly, his calm presence stirring a memory she spent months trying to drown. Caroline's throat tightens. She turns away, whispering to herself, "I said sorry." But the whisper doesn't sound like truth. It sounds like habit. Behind her, the intercom announces another flight, the same tone she once used to command order. Now it just echoes, hollow, endless. The car hums softly down the quiet road, morning light spilling through the windshield. Marcus's hands rest steady on the wheel. Not tense, not loose, just still. In the back seat, Ava hums under her breath, her sketchbook open on her lap. "That one looks like a plane," she says, pointing to a cloud. Her brother laughs. "Nah, that's a bird." Marcus glances in the mirror. "Maybe it's both," he says gently. "Maybe that's how it's supposed to be." The twins fall silent, tracing the sky with their eyes. The radio murmurs faintly, a reporter talking about policy changes, new diversity training, and public accountability. Marcus doesn't turn it up. He's heard enough of those words to know they don't always mean what they say. Still, this morning they sound different, less like promises, more like echoes finally answered. At a red light, Ava looks up. "Daddy, are you happy now?" she asks. Marcus takes a slow breath. "Happy's not the word," he says, "but I think I can breathe again." His voice cracks just slightly, like a door opening after a long storm. Later, standing by the window of their small home, Marcus watches planes rise into the open blue. The same sky that once held their fear now feels wider, calmer. He whispers, almost to himself, "We didn't have to shout to be heard." The twins run past him, their laughter filling the room like music. Marcus closes his eyes for a moment, not to forget, but to let go. Outside, a jet passes, leaving a thin white trail that fades slow, soft, and certain, like justice that finally learned how to listen.